Welcome to the Cast Pulse podcast, where we bring you the people, ideas, and science shaping the future of food and agriculture. I'm your host, Carlos Viana, Director of Marketing and Communications at Cast. Before we begin today's episode, a few important announcements from Cast. The Cast Lifetime Achievement Award will be presented next Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 a.m. Central during the World Food Prize events in Des Moines, Iowa. This year's honoree is Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, recognized for his decades of leadership in agricultural development and global food security. To register for the ceremony, visit cast-science.org. And for students, applications remain open for the Cast Science Communication Scholarship, a $1,000 award celebrating excellence in communicating agricultural science. The deadline to apply is November 7, and details are available at cast-science.org. Now, on to today's conversation. This week, we're featuring a full interview led by Kaylee Kleitsch, our Programs and Engagement Manager. Kaylee sat down with Lurkins, Senior Policy Advisor for the Agriculture Nutrient Policy Council, and Adam Herges, Sustainability Agronomist with the Mosaic Company. They discuss the Council's new report, the role of herbicides in the success of agriculture's foundation for conservation and environmental objectives, and explore how herbicides intersect with conservation, soil health, and agricultural policy. Let's get into the conversation.
Could you guys please explain to the audience what the Ag Nutrient Policy Council is and its role in the agriculture policy field?
The ANPC, as we call it, the Agricultural Nutrient Policy Council, actually has been around since 2010. As we sit here today, we are comprised of over 50 state and federal agricultural trade associations or agribusinesses. And back in 2010, we were really founded when issues like the Chesapeake Bay and nitrogen and phosphorus in water was becoming a larger issue for agriculture to handle. Folks that worked in sort of DC-based agricultural organizations felt like they really needed a better way for supporting agricultural groups across the country as to quickly mobilize on those issues. And so throughout the last 15 years, we've evolved, obviously, out of just Chesapeake Bay issues. There are nutrient issues that touch agriculture in pretty much every state across our country in some way or the other. And the Ag Nutrient Policy Council helps to engage ag groups and ag businesses in legal, policy, and technical issues related to either the Clean Water Act or Farm Bill conservation programs that have to do with ag nutrients. We like to serve as a major point of contact for both federal and state agencies to meaningfully engage with agriculture groups. We've supported a lot of our state organizations as they move forward in implementing state-led nutrient reduction strategies, or in some states are called nutrient loss reduction strategies. And we like to collaborate. We like to see a lot of new ideas and new partnerships formed. And sometimes that's as simple as just bringing folks together. That obviously includes ag groups, ag businesses in individual states, and then learning across state lines. We collaborate with academia. We collaborate with our state and federal agencies, and also a bunch of different trade associations that represent different interests when it comes to ag policy. So we are busy, and we are really proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish and will continue to accomplish in our work.
So what motivated this latest report, and what really makes it significant?
So the Agricultural Nutrient Policy Council just published a report called The Role of Herbicides in the Success of Agricultural's Foundation for Conservation and Environmental Objectives. This report and the role that ANPC wanted to play in actually publishing this report started roughly 4 to 5 years ago. And, there was a heightened awareness around herbicide registrations. There was some concerns about, certain herbicides being taken away from the agricultural industry. And we wanted to really lean in on the fact that herbicides play a significant role in a systems role at the farm field in terms of advancing conservation practices. And those conservation practices are really important to improving water quality in localized regions where, ag is predominantly the major working landscape. And so as you look at even historical reference, we've come a long way in agriculture. People aren't out there cultivating weeds anymore. We're now using herbicides to do that type of work. We've seen an increase in crop production, but also the ability of a farmer to leverage cover crops or reduce tillage to no-till, which we know plays a significant role in reducing soil erosion, which also reduces total phosphorus going into rivers, streams, and lakes. And so without herbicide as one of those key components, farmers wouldn't have the tools and the ability to continue on their stewardship journey. And so we wanted to make sure that we leaned in as an organization, even though we're focused on nutrients and looking at fertilizer and manure. But we know that herbicides plays a very key role in a farmer's ability to leverage other conservation practices on the field. And so while this report started 5 years ago, and we just launched and published it in 2025 this year, herbicides and heightened awareness and that discussion is still elevated today. And so it was still a perfect opportunity for ANPC to launch this report now with the new administration and what MAHA is working on in terms of, working to make America great or healthy again.
So knowing the history, the motivation, what are some of the main takeaways, especially for producers and policymakers?
Yeah, I think, one of our main goals was to inform policymakers and the public and just how interrelated these products are with other environmental goals that we have. So, Adam and I have spent time in our careers working, directly with farmers. And I kind of think about those conversations a lot because if I ever have gone to a farmer and said, I really need you to take on cover crop or start thinking about tillage in a different way, they will say the first thing out of their mouth generally is, well, then I need access to herbicide products and I need the ability to use those and count on them, or I am taking a huge risk in taking on some of these practices. And for a long time, folks talked about just how important no-till was, and every farmer that I engaged with did credit a lot of the herbicide products for making that transition. And so I think, sometimes in policymaker worlds or in the public sphere, things can, items and certain aspects of agriculture certainly can be villainized and sort of oversimplified. And I think our main point was to show that, out at the farm for farmers and ag retail and ag business to really be part of environmental solutions, these should not be villainized. They should be some education and awareness of just how critical they are. And so that's really the goal. We obviously need herbicide products because farmers every day face resistance issues. So we need to make sure that we have a variety of very effective products that are available to them, just staying slightly ahead of weed resistance issues. And then we absolutely had to make the point that the herbicides are critical to taking on any of these best practices that we know are important for water quality. That is important for our policymakers to know because it underpins a lot of our state and federal cost share programs that we have for on-farm conservation. If we are not realistic about the role that these herbicide products play, we are setting up our farmers and ag retail to fail in those programs as well. And so we need to be thinking about, taxpayer dollars and also just the effectiveness of really anything that we're setting out to do in this policy space.
Yeah, and I would just add some of the other highlights of the report actually lean into even food security. So if, farmers didn't have the ability to have herbicide products available to them, effective products, we could see crop yields decrease by up to 50%. And so, as we're a global society, even a US society, we have to grow more food to meet a growing population. And so why would we remove these necessary tools and effective tools that could inhibit or restrict our ability to feed a growing population? And the other side of that as well, and I know Lauren touched on this, but we've done a lot over the last 60 years to reduce soil erosion. The Farm Bill sprung up out of the 1930s, the first Farm Bill. And so why would we move backwards when we've made considerable progress in terms of reducing soil erosion, also building soil organic matter, and some of these new practices that are starting to become mainstream, like the use of cover crops? We need herbicides and those tools to be effective in our ability to leverage conservation practices or regenerative ag practices.
So if you could touch on how science informs policy in this space, how science informs this report, and any gaps that you see, especially today, in between research and regulation in agriculture.
So for us at the Ag Nutrient Policy Council, having solid science inform our policy is pretty much foundational for everything that we do. A lot of folks say, like, in state regulatory agencies are looking for fast answers to the science, and sometimes we have those within the literature already, and other times we have to look for those answers, and they don't come overnight. And so it is an effort to always make sure that we are leaning into the science to inform any of the policy that we're working on. And this particular issue, we did work with a number of scientists and experts to be able to put this report together. If it's a scientific community or a scientific researcher that's reading the report, I would think that maybe they would not be surprised by what they're reading, and I think that's important to know, that the scientific community was not the target audience here. It is actually trying to figure out how to translate that science into the policy world, and that is not always it's not always an easy task. I think whenever I think about the importance of the scientific community on what do we do from this point, we know that our groups that are members of ANPC and the farmers that join those groups or the ag retail facilities, they rely on weed scientists across this country to continue to work on all of the issues that we outline in the report and to work together across state lines. So we have communicated to a lot of the weed scientists that we were doing this. They were very happy about it. But really, we would love to see that partnership continue, because there's clearly a lot more work to do to make sure that we stay ahead of some of the issues that we see in the countryside, and that we're always ready to answer the questions that policymakers have in this space.
How do you see this report shaping the way agribusinesses and industry groups may approach sustainability?
Yeah, being from the fertilizer industry, we don't sell herbicide products, but this report was really helpful in sharing it across, colleagues of mine within the industry, in terms of understanding that at the farm field level, it's really a systems approach. And so allowing farmers to have all the tools in the toolbox to make operational decisions that are going to be effective for their own operation, their specific soil types. And so, herbicide plays a major role in that if we want to advance conservation practices. The role of herbicides at the field level for a farmer, it's reduced the number of passes that they're out there with their tractor. It has reduced the number of equipment as well. And then it allows them to look at, what other in-field conservation practices can I implement on the farm, or other edge of field practices. But at the end of the day, the farmer gets paid for bushels. And so we need to continue to increase crop yields, while also being mitigating any of the risks that, farming has on the environment. And so it's really a systems approach, and we need all the tools in the toolbox. We really don't want regulation or government standing in and saying, no, we're going to pull these types of products because we might not think they're effective, but yet we know in the scientific community and within weed science, they have demonstrated that these products are effective. And there's nuances in terms of where those products should be used, right? They have different modes of action. But that's important that we continue to stand up research in this country to help guide our decisions, whether it's someone with a pencil in DC that's writing policy, right?
So you mentioned policy in that answer, and some regulatory changes. Looking forward, once these policymakers have the report in their hand or as they're looking at it, what do you guys hope that they really take away from it, and what changes do you hope that we see in policy and regulation?
Yeah, I will say that when we finalized the report, we tried to do briefings, and we were really happy that we were able to have the opportunity to do a briefing with folks within EPA and multiple parts within USDA. Some of them, were even more expertise than we were on this topic. So they're like, perfect. Thank you for, weighing in. This is great. We also were able to send it to the Make America Healthy Again Commission. And that was really, the timing of that was sort of between the first version of their report and then the more strategic, shorter version. At that time, there were also other ag groups all across the spectrum that were contacting the MAHA Commission about a lot of issues, including herbicide products and pesticide use in general. So on that end, we were one voice of many that was weighing in with regulatory agencies to let them know. I think our position and our angle on the issue was unique, though, and that's because our organizations, or our members that are part of our organization, are committed to a lot of these environmental outcomes, these goals that we've set for either soil health or water quality, all of the environmental goals. And they're taking efforts to implement, different programs to get these practices on the ground. And so I think, being committed to these environmental outcomes, you just have to be realistic with what it looks like out throughout the countryside on the ground. And it is with a reliance on these products. So I personally, even in response to the question on how does this report help ag retail or farmers, on their path on sustainability, I personally feel like we're already there. Farmers are already relying on their ag retail facilities and their own networks to take on these practices and to make sure that they're thinking about the use of herbicides for things like cover crops or conservation tillage. So I think we're already there. I think as we scale up the practices across the countryside, we're going to just need, more of that partnership so the sustainability can just grow. But yeah, I think our regulatory agencies were excited to see this work product. And I think we can take some credit that the second MAHA report looked slightly different when it came to the discussion about herbicide products.
When you read through the final report, what stands out to you most personally? What do you think really makes it special?
I think the biggest thing about the report that really stands out to me is the interconnection between input products that the farmer is leveraging for improved crop yield and productivity at the field level, but the connectiveness to conservation practices. So without herbicides, we would not be where we are today. And the advancements that we've made in agriculture, even here in the US. And we know a lot of this work even translates to other agricultural regions around the world as well. But that was the main one that stood out to me, is the importance of herbicides in this systems approach and giving the tools to the farmer to make decisions about where they want to go in terms of the stewardship of their own operation, their own land. And so the ability of herbicides to open doors to other sort of conservation practices, different ways of thinking of what's going to best serve the need of that field and that operation with that farmer. I think that was the biggest thing that kind of jumped out at me. Being in the fertilizer industry and thinking about nutrient use all the time, I tend not to think about herbicide as as much that I normally would. So
for me, what stuck out was, having had that experience of talking one-on-one with farmers about any of these practices and the reality of getting them on the ground for a lot of other environmental outcomes. The fact that we could help sort of thread that needle in 55 pages of a report to explain, oh no, seriously, we need it, and here are all of the reasons why we need these products. So I feel like we helped add a little bit of depth to an issue that is just sort of common sense out in the countryside within the ag community. We were able to really add the scientific backing to that for this policy and stakeholder and public sort of audience to read the report. We were able to kind of share it with the media as well, and hopefully that would get out, and we could continue to do a little bit more with the general public. But again, I think it's just sort of adding that meat on the bones from a scientific perspective that to help kind of tell what's already happening out in the countryside and the importance out there.
The main point that I want listeners and folks that might listen in on this discussion is, when you think about where agriculture is going in the future, we have a surge of regenerative ag, sort of systems approach. People have a keen interest in moving from, intensive tillage to reduced tillage to no-till, thinking about soil health. The only way that we can do that is leveraging herbicides. So if we want to continue on this path of creating a more sustainable ag system, we need tools like herbicide to play an important role. And so if we want ag to move in that direction, we need tools like herbicides.
Well said, Adam. I think the only thing I would leave folks with is this is one of the projects that we took on as a council in 2025. We've been busy on a whole number of other issues throughout the year. We have big plans for next year. We try to lay all of that out on our website, which is agnutrientpolicy.org. You can find this report and a lot of our other reports that have more to do with our nutrient and water quality work. And we're really proud of a lot of that work. We were happy to finish up this project in a very timely way, especially with all of the discussion around the MAHA report. So we were very happy to get that out, but I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of our website and some of the other resources that we have available.
That was Lauren Lurkins and Adam Herges in conversation with Kaylee Kleitsch, discussing how science, policy, and on-farm practices work together to support sustainable agriculture. You can read the full report at agnutrientpolicy.org. Make sure to follow CAST on social media at CAST Ag Science for updates, news, and behind-the-scenes stories from our programs and events. And don't forget, the CAST Pulse podcast is available exclusively on Spotify, so be sure to follow us there for new episodes every week. I'm Carlos Viana, and this has been the CAST Pulse podcast, connecting credible science, conversations, and the future of agriculture. Thanks for listening.